Hey guys, what's happening? Niat here with Film Comics Explained. Halloween is close at hand, and I will be dedicating the next few videos to horror. You guys have been giving me some fantastic suggestions for explanation videos, and comics you would like to see, which I'm in the process of looking into. A few of you have asked me to look at the Crossed comics created by Garth Ennis and Jacen Burrows, and I've done just that. This is one graphically disturbing comic, and coincidentally, a great way to start our road to Halloween. The story focuses on a group of survivors trying to make sense of a pandemic and ultimately reach safety. But what sets this comic apart from traditional virus stories is that the pandemic that has broken out causes the victims to carry out their most evil thoughts. They still retain a basic level of intelligence, which allows them to drive vehicles, fire weapons, and set elaborate traps, which is terrifying. Garth Ennis is an Irish-born American comic book writer who has worked with all the major comic book printing houses like DC, Vertigo, and Marvel, among others. He's probably best known for creating Preacher, which has been adapted into a TV series. Preacher tells the story of Jesse Custer, a preacher in Texas who is possessed by the supernatural spirit named Genesis, the infant of an unnatural coupling of an angel and demon, giving Custer power rivaling God himself. He's worked on Judge Dredd and the Punisher comics for Marvel. He's also responsible for The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, a one-shot that shows Frank Castle single-handedly wiping out every superhero on Earth after his wife and daughter were killed by a battle involving the Avengers, the X-Men, and aliens in Central Park. Ennis is known to not be a fan of conventional superhero comics, which would explain why the hero who's worked with most is a human anti-hero, who also happens to wipe out every superhero that Ennis despises. I've left a link to a few of his published works in the comments below, and I highly recommend you check them out. Jacen Burrows, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is an American graphic artist who has worked predominantly with Avatar Press. His early work included being an occasional artist for Marvel's Ultimate Spider-Man, as well as being one of the artists involved in Grand Theft Auto: Vice City. He worked side by side with seasoned writer Alan Moore on The Courtyard, Magic Words, and Neonomicon, among others. I'll also be leaving links to a few of his comics below. Both Ennis and Burrows had actually worked on the Comics 303 in 2004. Having felt their styles complemented each other and being happy with their work on the 6 issues, they decided to team up again 4 years later to bring you Crossed. Remember YouTube? Think back far enough, you will. We can see a man approaching Jim's diner covered in blood, carrying what appears to be a spine in his right hand. We then see the stranger enter the diner. To me, it caught the essence of the days before precisely. Footage was posted of whatever, and instantly the race was on to bellow fake, requiring no thought, just a reflex, and born of one abiding truth. We were unshockable. Nothing was real because nothing affected us. Not our war, not the planet coughing blood and quitting. We absorbed or we ignored, never knowing. The stranger throws the spine onto the bench, not suspecting for a second that something real was coming down the tracks. The owner approaches the stranger and asks him what he is doing. What is this nonsense? It isn't Halloween, son. You're going to a fancy dress party and it's a very impressive costume, so don't let us keep you waiting. You hear me? Stan, the narrator, who is seated a few meters away, explains that he doesn't blame him, as the first thing he did when he saw the guy was look around for someone filming on their phone. The stranger has scars on either side of his cheeks and an unnatural smile that he continues to wear. I guess you think this is funny, but you're making a mess and the smell is putting people off their food. Get going. Sonny, up until now I've been polite with you. Understand? We then see the stranger lean over and take a bite out of Jim's nose. Jim takes a few steps back before collapsing onto the floor. The stranger is then hit across the face by the waitress with the coffee maker, causing it to shatter. She then hands Jim a towel and tells him to put it on his nose while he writhes in agony. She then yells at somebody to call for help, but everyone in the diner is still in shock. We then see a police car racing past. Stan yells out after it, but it continues on, before crashing into a nearby building. A few of the people from the diner look outside at the wreckage. The waitress tells Jim to hang on and looks up at the TV. We can see the driver of the vehicle has flown through the window and come to a grisly conclusion. He also has the same grin on his face as the stranger in the bar. We can hear some of the people inside the diner encouraging the nearby witnesses to help get them out. The waitress then changes the channel on the TV.
Get
Get him off me. How the hell did he get in security? For Christ's sake! Call the... Jesus! Commercial. Go to commercial. No, get off me. Lock them. They're still in there. God, someone do something. There are a number of people gathering towards the flames who witnessed the explosion. Did you see that? Dude, how could I not? What were they doing? Did you see what they were doing? Hey. Shit. There was so much we didn't know. How could we? Inside the cockpit, we can see the pilot has a cross on his face and is deliberately causing it to plummet. Too much was happening. Too fast to process. All I knew right then was I was almost deaf. Even Cindy, who got an inkling of the scale of it before the rest of us, had no idea just what it truly was. Like I said, too much, too fast. Come on, legs, stand. Come on, arms, drag him off the guy. Sure, you bet. Just give me one more minute. Just to get my crap together, and I'm your man. But when I saw what Jim had done, I was no less useless than before. At least I was facing in the wrong direction. When I did look, 30 seconds later, many things were blurring through my head. Was this an attack? Who was responsible? Russia? China? No. It didn't fit with what was taking hold around me, but your mind throws up the words that match the picture. Stan then explains that it was the nuclear power plant in Wolfcreek. One of them must have pulled the control rods. Are you okay? Kelly, right? It's Stan from the diner. What you have to understand is that no one ever found out how it started, where it came from, who got bitten first. All of this was a mystery. If anyone stopped long enough to do some meaningful research, I doubt they would have survived. God's judgment was a speculation thrown down a few months later by Cindy. I smiled. No humor in it. Rolled my eyes towards the little band behind the tree line before I muttered, like God makes any sense at all. She set the butt of her carbine to her hip, shrugged as she turned to face the night. It does if he's a cocksucker, she said. And I had to admit, she might just have a point. I was blown away by how intense the imagery was in the opening sequences. I found my eyes glued to the screen and my jaw almost hit the ground. We picked back up 10 months later to find Andy and Cindy on the edge of a hill, looking into a nearby town with binoculars. There are 2 rifles in between them. Andy notes that they have been there but is unsure whether they are still out there, as there is no sign of life except for the birds. Cindy tells him that she can see a supermarket and 2 grocery stores that have been broken into, but it was hard to tell if they were empty. Andy insists that they give it a couple more minutes but soon regrets this. He tells her he spotted them in the town square before looking away. I mean, the next image is just chaos. We have skeletons dangling in the background, surrounded by crows. What we have on the ground is a gang of people infected with the cross virus, attacking others trying to get away. Andy then explains that Cindy had brought Patrick, a small boy, with her for no other reason than the fact that she did not trust the rest of them to keep him safe. After many hours, the 3 of them approach the mouth of a large cave. Andy soon calls out to the dark with, "Hey man!" As they get closer, they spot the guard who is seated with a pistol in his hand. He greets them and says hello to Patrick, who replies with, "Hello." He explains that he was starting to get worried about them as they were taking longer than expected. Andy explains that they had a couple of scares on the way back and wanted to play it safe. Cindy continues inside with Patrick as Andy tells him that they traveled 20 miles for nothing. He then tells him that he will get himself some food and will give the man a break from watch duty when he returns. Inside the cave are a handful of survivors they have picked up along the way. They appear to be in an old mine shaft and are using torches for light. Andy then tells us about an ex-marine he knew who had told him that he knew what he would do if the world came to an end, insisting that when it got crazy, there would be no more hiding from the truth about ourselves. That same guy was forced to eat his own eyes by the crust before they really started working on him. Andy also tells us that he was glad this happened, as it robbed the ex-marine of an opportunity to tell the Cross that he was in a ditch nearby. There was no reasoning with the Cross, although he had seen many attempt it. There were a few who had persisted with the Mad Max ideology, but Andy's advice was to avoid gunfights like the plague, and loot the losers if you were lucky enough. 10 months after the incident at the diner, and they had survived. They gained a few, lost some too, and kept their head above water by being sneaky, but that was as far as they got. Thinking beyond the present was rare, as survival was your foremost thought. You had to understand that drawing breath was all you had to hope for. and if you reached any higher, you were greedy, and that was when you might start to lose it. We get an example of this from Joel, who was talking an awful lot about salt. Joel enthusiastically tells him the source of his inspiration by describing an altercation he had with a crossed. So, I'm freaking out, okay? This one right behind me, and I know he's going to get me, and I come to the end of the aisle and there's a big pool of something. I jump it, but he slipped. Next thing I knew, he's choking and coughing. He had slipped in whatever it was and went into a stack of salt. It's gone everywhere in his eyes, nose, and mouth, and it was killing him. This is the answer. It's what we've been waiting for. He then holds up a 10-pound bag of salt as he says, "It's what kills them." But the group appears to be disinterested. Kelly asks if it might have been wishful thinking on his part, and Joel is offended, insisting that she wasn't there. It's here that Kelly brings up a rational point, saying that anyone who got a face full of salt would be uncomfortable, and it would probably hurt a lot. She then asks if he really saw it die, and Joel admits that he was too busy running away. He then insists that he grabbed some salt and heard it scream as he ran off. We see Joel getting defensive, but Andy soon jumps in and tells him that he's seen too much sci-fi and spent way too much time playing video games to be truly grounded in reality. Andy begins to give Joel a reality check before saying, "I'd come to crave that sneer of his that pissed me off and made me pity him in equal measure. I tried to provoke it every chance I got. The frustration it awoke, the desire to take his head off, pulsing behind my eyes like the pain that seems to soothe you through fever." Joel then tells him that he has nothing to base that on, saying, "You think negativity is a virtue. I'm talking about a way to stop running." Kelly then asks him if he's willing to gamble on his family's life, before telling him that's exactly what he will be doing. His wife then turns to him and tells him that she hopes they can stop soon, as their daughter Arwen was getting thin. I'm pretty sure Joel was inspired by Tolkien and named his daughter after the half-elven daughter of Elrond. His wife insists that they need to rest, and Joel reluctantly agrees, before asking that if there was no way to fight back and turn this around, what was the point? Cindy then says to stay alive, stay human, never mind that you could end up one without the other. You had your work cut out most days, avoiding the thought of giving up on both. We see Andy approaching the entrance to the cave as he tells the guard to go eat. That's all that we have time for today. I'm curious to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. What do you think of the crossvirus? And what would you do to survive a similar pandemic? As always, it's been a pleasure. Niad here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
I just want to start a flame in you.